The night the pack house burned, Elena Voss was 3 miles away, gathering herbs by the light of a half-moon. She smelled the smoke before she saw the glow above the trees, and she smelled something else beneath it, something sharper and more frightened than fire. She followed that second smell without knowing why, her feet moving faster than her thoughts, until she came to the edge of the ruins. The pack house was gone. Only blackened beams remained, standing like the ribs of some great dead animal. Elena pressed a hand over her mouth and stepped closer, careful of the smoldering wood, and that was when she heard it. A thin, weak cry, coming from beneath a fallen door. She dropped her basket of herbs and dug with her bare hands. Splinters bit into her palms. She did not stop. When she finally pulled the door aside, she found a baby wrapped in a scorched blanket, untouched by the flames, as if some invisible hand had shielded her the whole time. The baby had a head of dark hair and eyes that, for one strange moment, flashed gold in the moonlight, before settling into ordinary brown. Elena knew the old stories. Everyone in the borderlands did. She knew what gold eyes meant, and she knew what blanket this was, because the crest stitched into the corner, though half burned away, was unmistakable. It belonged to the Alpha King's line. She should have left the child for the King's people to find. She should have reported what she saw. Instead, she wrapped the baby closer against her chest, felt the tiny heart beating fast and desperate against her own, and made a decision that would shape the next 15 years of her life. She named her Meera, after her own mother, and she told no one where the baby came from. The years that followed were quiet ones. Elena lived on the edge of a small human village called Aldwick, far from any pack territory, in a cottage with a garden and a chimney that always seemed to need fixing. She was known there as a healer, a woman who could set a broken bone or calm a fever, and no one asked too many questions about the little girl who grew up beside her, who called her mama and knew nothing of wolves or kings. But some things could not be hidden forever. When Meera was 6, she growled in her sleep, a low, rough sound that did not belong in a child's throat. Elena sat beside her bed until morning, watching, her heart aching with fear she did not yet understand. When Meera was 10, she scratched a boy who pushed her at the village well, and when Elena checked his arm, she found marks too deep and too precise to have come from human nails. When Meera was 13, her eyes flashed gold during a thunderstorm, just for a second, just long enough for Elena to see it, and press her into a hug so the other children would not. Elena taught her daughter to breathe slowly when she felt anger rising. She taught her to keep her nails short and her voice soft. She taught her to smile at neighbors, and never, ever let them see anything strange. And every night, after Meera fell asleep, Elena sat by the window and wondered how much longer she could hold back what was clearly growing inside the girl. She got her answer on Meera's 15th birthday. It began as an ordinary afternoon. Meera was helping in the garden, laughing at something Elena had said, when a strange stillness fell over her. Her laughter stopped. Her eyes turned fully gold, and this time, they did not fade back. She dropped the basket of vegetables she was carrying and gripped the fence, breathing hard, as though something inside her was trying to break free. "Meera," Elena said, rushing to her side, "look at me. Breathe like I taught you." But it was too late for breathing exercises. Meera's whole body trembled, and for one terrifying moment, Elena saw the shape of something else beneath her daughter's skin, something powerful and wild, straining to emerge. Then, just as suddenly, it passed. Meera collapsed into Elena's arms, exhausted and confused, tears streaking down her face. "What is happening to me?" she whispered. "What am I?" Elena held her daughter, and finally, after 15 years of silence, told her the truth. She told her about the burning pack house, the crest on the blanket, the way she had chosen to protect rather than report. She told her that somewhere out there, Meera had a father, if he still lived, and a heritage that made her more than human. Meera did not react with anger, as Elena feared she might. Instead, she asked one question, quiet and small. "Do you still love me, even though I'm not really yours?" "You have always been mine," Elena said, and meant it with everything she had. They did not have long to adjust to this new truth before the world came looking for them. 2 days later, a man appeared in Aldwick, asking questions about a healer and a girl with unusual eyes. Elena recognized danger in his careful, searching questions, the way his gaze lingered too long on Meera when they passed him in the market. That night, Elena packed a bag with the essentials and prepared to run, as she always knew she might one day have to. But before they could leave, someone else found them first. He came at dusk, tall and quiet, standing at the edge of the garden as though unsure he had the right to step further. Elena recognized the crest on his cloak before she recognized his face, the same one that had been burned into the corner of that blanket 15 years ago. Her breath caught. "You're him," she said. "Damien Cross." The man's eyes widened, not at being recognized, but at what stood behind Elena. Meera had stepped out onto the porch, curious about the visitor, and the moment Damien saw her, his knees nearly gave out beneath him. "She has her mother's eyes," he said, his voice breaking. "I thought she died in the fire. I thought I lost everyone." The story poured out slowly over that long evening, pieced together between careful, disbelieving glances at the girl who stood between two lives she had never known existed. Damien had been the Alpha King, betrayed by his own beta, a man named Callahan, who wanted the throne for himself. Callahan had set the pack house on fire, believing he had killed the king, his wife, and their infant daughter, all in one terrible night. Damien survived, barely, dragging himself away from the flames with wounds that took years to heal, both in body and in spirit. He had spent every year since searching for any sign that his daughter had survived, chasing rumors that always led nowhere, until a hunter's report of gold eyes in a border village reached him. "I never stopped looking," he said, looking at Elena with something between gratitude and grief. "And you were the one who found her. You raised her." "I did what anyone would have done," Elena said, though her voice trembled. "No," Damien said gently. "You did what almost no one would have done. You gave up your own peace to protect a stranger's child." Meera, listening quietly to all of this, finally spoke. "Is that man still looking for me, the one from the village?" Damien's expression darkened. "Callahan has spent years hunting for any surviving trace of my bloodline. If he learned there might be an heir, he would not stop until he found her. I fear the man in your village may already be one of his." That fear proved correct faster than any of them wished. 3 nights later, while the small household slept, a group of armed men descended on Aldwych. They moved quietly at first, searching house to house, but panic spread fast once villagers realized what was happening. Elena woke to the sound of shouting and the smell of smoke, memories of that first terrible night rushing back so vividly she nearly froze. She did not freeze. She grabbed Meera and ran. Damien met them at the edge of the garden, already fighting off 2 men who had found the cottage first. "Get her to the woods," he shouted to Elena. "I will hold them here." "I am not leaving you," Elena said, and there was no argument in her voice, only certainty. Meera, caught between the 2 adults who had shaped her entire life in different ways, felt something inside her shift. The fear that had always accompanied her strange abilities began to change into something else, something steadier. She thought of every night Elena had sat beside her bed, every lesson in patience and control, every act of quiet protection given without asking for anything in return. She thought of the father she had just met, who had spent 15 years refusing to give up hope. She would not let either of them be taken from her now. When Callahan himself arrived, confident and cruel, expecting an easy victory over a wounded king and a healer with no fighting skill, he found instead a girl standing between them, with eyes burning full gold, her whole body glowing with a power that had been waiting 15 years to be called upon. "Impossible," Callahan breathed, taking a step back. "The cross-bloodline power skips generations. It should not have awakened in a child raised among humans." But it had. Meera felt the strength moving through her like a river finally allowed to run free, and though she was frightened, she did not let the fear stop her. She thought of her mother, both the one she never knew and the one who raised her, and she let that love become her strength instead of her weakness. The fight that followed was fierce and short. Damien, seeing his daughter's courage, found strength he thought he had lost years ago. Elena, though she had no wolf abilities of her own, refused to step back, standing her ground and calling out warnings, guiding Meera with the same steady voice she had always used. Together, the three of them who had never expected to be a family fought as though they had always been one. Callahan was defeated before the sun rose, his forces scattering once their leader fell, but victory came at a cost. In the final moments of the fight, Elena had thrown herself in front of Meera to block a blow meant for the girl, and she went down hard, blood spreading across the grass. "No," Meera screamed, dropping to her knees beside the only mother she had ever known. "Please, no, not now, not after everything." Damien knelt beside them both, his hands glowing faintly with an old, half-forgotten pack magic, the kind of healing power passed down only to those of true alpha blood. He pressed his hands to Elena's wound, drawing on strength he did not know he still had, pouring every bit of it into saving the woman who had saved his daughter. It was close. For a long, terrible hour, none of them knew if it would be enough. But as dawn broke fully over Aldwych, Elena's breathing steadied, her eyes opened, and she found both Damien and Meera leaning over her, faces streaked with tears and dirt and relief. "You are not allowed to do that again," Meera said, half laughing, half sobbing. "I make no promises," Elena whispered, and even in her weakened state she smiled. In the weeks that followed, the truth of the cross bloodline was restored across the packs that had once served under Damien. Meera was recognized as the rightful heir, a 15-year-old girl who had grown up believing herself entirely human, now standing as proof that love and courage could outlast even the darkest betrayal. She insisted, gently but firmly, that her new role would not mean abandoning the woman who raised her, and no one who saw the bond between them dared suggest otherwise. Damien, healing from old wounds both seen and unseen, found himself standing often beside Elena in the quiet hours, watching Meera grow more confident every day, more certain of who she was and where she belonged. There was a warmth between the two adults that neither had expected to find again, born not from sudden passion, but from years of shared devotion to the same child, from gratitude that had slowly, gently become something more. "I never thought I would have a family again," Damien admitted to her one evening, as they watched Meera practice her new abilities in the garden, laughing at her own mistakes, instead of fearing them. "Neither did I," Elena said, "but here we are." Meera, catching sight of them from across the garden, smiled to herself. She had spent years wondering what she was, afraid of the strange power hiding beneath her skin. Now she understood that she had never needed to be afraid, because from the very beginning, she had been surrounded by people willing to protect her, fight for her, and love her without condition. The girl who had been pulled from a burning ruin 15 years earlier had grown into someone strong enough to protect the two people who had once protected her. And in doing so, she had given them both something they had long ago given up hoping for: a home, a family, and a future built not on power or bloodlines, but on the simple, stubborn love that had carried them through the fire and out the other side.